Hello, Katie Wilson. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you too.
I'm a proud resident of this fine city for the past 6 years. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to potentially see it made a little bit better. You moved here yourself. You weren't born here in Seattle, right?
Yeah, that's right. I grew up in upstate New York, in a kind of small, medium-sized city called Binghamton, New York. And I moved out here with my husband in 2004. So I've lived here for just over 20 years.
Gotcha. 2004. Wow, okay. How much has the city changed since then?
Oh my God, it's like a totally different place. So when we moved here, we actually before we decided to move to Seattle, we were like 21, 22, and we spent a couple months traveling around the country on the Greyhound bus, which is much, much less romantic than it sounds.
Yeah.
And we didn't really have any money, so we were like timing our bus trips to sleep on the bus in between cities. And we were kind of like trying to figure out where we wanted to move to. And we spent a few days in Seattle, and we thought it was really cool. So we just like moved out here. We didn't have like money in the bank. We didn't have jobs lined up. And we were able to just find a room to rent in someone's basement for like $400 a month. So it was like
400. Oh, that really was a
yeah.
long time ago, huh?
Yeah, so the whole vibe in Seattle at that point, like it was still a big city, right? But it had this kind of neighborhood feeling to it, and it was really affordable. It was kind of funky, and so yeah, I mean, over the last 20 some years, like that was like Amazon existed in 2004, but they hadn't actually planted their flag in Seattle and grown up here. So in the last 20 years, just the tech industry has exploded. The population's exploded. We've just had, tons of people moving here. And so it's really transformed the city, and it's just made it into a place that's like so hard to afford if you're not making six figures. And honestly, even if you're making six figures, a lot of people are still struggling because everything is so expensive.
I sympathize with your bus tour, or your Grand America tour ending here. I didn't expect to move here myself. I came up with friends when I was in college. There was a Capitol Hill block party that we wanted to attend, and we had a Seattle dog. It was loud. There were gay people running around. It was great, and I mean, I loved it so much. I thought, okay, well, God willing, after college is done, I'll move up here from California. I'm originally from LA. I went to Northern California for school, but I liked it so much that I made it my goal to move here eventually. And time was a year and a half later, I finally moved up here. You live in Capitol Hill, right?
I do, yeah. I've lived in Capitol Hill for the last like 10 years or so, and yeah, it's a great neighborhood to live in. Like I'm a renter, so I live with my husband and our just turning 2-year-old in an apartment. 650 square feet. It's real cozy.
Congratulations.
But Capitol Hill is a good neighborhood to do that in because it's very dense. It's like one of the densest neighborhoods in the city, and so it's very walkable. Like there's a bunch of grocery stores like within 4 blocks of us. There's great parks and playgrounds. Also, I don't have a car, so I ride public transit everywhere. I used to bike everywhere before I had my kid. Bicycle was like my transportation. We're not on the bike yet, so we definitely take the bus and the train like pretty much everywhere.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're from New York. You don't own a car. You use public transportation and a bicycle. Do you think you're better than me?
Absolutely not.
Okay, just making sure. Look, I would love to live that dream if I could. I'm not quite as close to the Capitol Hill urban core as you are. No, it's beautiful. I have.
Oh, listen,
No, please.
Here's the thing about transportation. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a good question, right? Because I think that
whether you think you're better than me.
Yeah, it's a great question because in the kind of like urbanist world, right, where people are just like all in on like density and multimodal transportation, I think that does sometimes come across as like kind of like condescending or like, why doesn't everyone just have this lifestyle? And I think it is important to note that it's like, Seattle, we have like a decent public transportation system compared to a lot of places around the country, but it is not easy to live here without a car, right? And so like, I totally get that for most people, that is not a feasible lifestyle. But like, here's the thing, like people are going to keep moving here, population is going to keep growing, and we just have these geographic limitations to how many cars can be on the road. So like for the people who need to drive for all kinds of reasons, in order for them to keep driving and have the roads not totally clogged up, all the other people who are moving here, like it needs to become way more possible for people to, get around by public transit and not need a car all the time. And so I think there's a really strong case, and like this shows up, right? Like Seattleites, even people who don't ride public transit really support it. And we see that when we vote on transit ballot measures. Everyone understands the importance of having a world-class public transit system and that we have a ways to go before we get there.
It seems like the city is built for it too, because this city is a nightmare to navigate by car often. It's not built for it. First Avenue, anything by Pike Place, a significant chunk of Capitol Hill. There are sections of the city that feel like it's ridiculous to even allow cars through them. Like they should be entirely pedestrianized. I mean, I don't know. Again, you're not driving, right? Because you're better than me. So maybe you weren't experiencing it. But the past 2 weeks, anytime I've gone downtown, anywhere on First, just a nightmare. And I think, you're on these like 1-lane roads that are theoretically like arterial. They're supposed to be feeding everything else, but in reality, they're backed up like, 5 miles an hour at most. And then you see Symphony Station. I mean, we have nice stations here. It's crazy to me that we don't put a few more eggs in those baskets. I mean, my understanding, you were with, still are, the Transit Riders Union. You've been fighting for this more cohesive urbanist approach for, longer than I've been here, certainly. How long have you been with them?
Yeah, so the Transit Riders Union, I helped to start it, so I'm kind of a co-founder of that organization.
Okay, all right.
So this back in Look, I'm a candidate. I have to brag. Okay, this is not my normal
please, no.
Be like, I did this, but like, when you're a candidate, you're supposed to pretend that everything was all you. Not anyway. So I co-founded an organization called the Transit Riders Union back in 2011, kind of 2011, 2012. And at that point, I'm guessing that most people on this call are significantly younger than I am. But you might remember, although you might not, the financial crisis in 2008. And so there was this great recession after the financial crisis, and transit agencies around the country were facing these huge budget shortfalls. And so our King County Metro, our bus system, we're talking about having to cut service like really deeply. And so there was like a fight to save bus service, and I got involved in that. And so out of that came the Transit Riders Union. And I'll say that like me and other people who were involved in starting it, we had a bigger vision too, right? It was really about the question of like, how do we organize and build power? How do like working people organize and build power in the 21st century? And like I had done, and my husband and other people, like we'd studied a lot of like social movements in the 20th century and like the labor movement and how that kind of like bolstered all of the victories that were won. And today, like so many people work part-time, and it's like really hard to organize people into that kind of labor union model. And so we were looking at like, what's other ways that we can organize and build power? And so we're like, well, let's organize people as transit riders, right? So it's a grassroots membership organization. Our members are transit riders. But over the years, we've also broadened out, and we're kind of like a multi-issue economic justice organization. So, because our members are transit riders, but we're also renters, we're also low-wage workers, like some people are homeless, right? And so all of these issues affect us. And so we've also done a ton of work over the years on affordable housing, on renter protections, on minimum wage, around King County and in cities around King County. Also on taxes.
I wanted to ask about this because over the past few decades, right, people have been more critical of the car-centric model of designing our cities. People have been more open, city councils have been more open to pedestrianization, to bus lines, to light rail, Seattle is, by an American standard, pretty good when it comes to integrating these alternate transit methods and not just relying on the car. But I think a recurring pattern that a lot of people see is that often these alternatives to car ridership are designed by people who drive cars. City councilmen and mayors who take the car everywhere are then asked to make decisions on where the best bus routes would go. I have taken public transit throughout Seattle enough to feel like it's pretty good, but I also came from LA. So one donkey pulling a cart would to me seem like a momentous improvement on what I grew up experiencing. When you look at
isn't LA finally getting like transit to the airport?
Yeah, they opened it up. It's actually really good. I visited right after they opened. It's actually really good. So, we'll see what they can do. When you look at our public transit infrastructure here in Seattle, what do you see that immediately stands out? Like, what do you think needs improvement?
I mean, yeah, I think we have a long way to go. We need a lot more service. And, the way that I don't want to get too in the weeds, but we have this kind of hub and spoke transit system where there's like the transit kind of radiates out from downtown. But east west, it's like really hard to get from here to there. And so if you go on Google Maps or whatever to plan your trip and you look at how long it's going to take transit versus drive, it's like 5 times longer to take transit. And you're like, yeah, of course, no one's going to choose that if they have another option. So there's a lot that we can do also to make transit more efficient and reliable by doing like dedicated bus lanes. Like this is a really important thing so that buses are not stuck in traffic. So if we can really have a network of dedicated bus lanes and like signal priority throughout the city, that will like really speed things up. Yeah.
Do you follow what they've done on Third as well? The fact they've made Third Avenue during the majority of the day like a bus only road. How much, what does their ridership look like there? Do you think that's done a good job of serving as a bus arterial route?
I think so. I mean, Third Ave, like the nice thing about it is that like a lot of people transfer downtown, right, from one bus to the other. So having them all right there really makes sense. I mean, Third Ave also is a little bit troubled, right? Downtown Seattle is like still struggling to come back from okay, understatement of the year, but is still struggling to come back from the pandemic to some extent. So there's a lot of like vacant buildings and there's a lot of like homelessness, there's a lot of drug use. And so it's definitely, and Third Ave is kind of like part of that. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done to revive downtown. And a part of that really in my mind is like making it into more of a residential neighborhood. So like before the pandemic, right, it's like, it would just kind of be dead after like 5 p.m., right? But great or work from home. And so really like the more we can do to have downtown become a place where people are living 20 and kind of a 24/7 neighborhood, that's really, the direction I think we need to go.
Well, that's what I love about Capitol Hill, right? It's downtown is bustling during the day. Afterwards, it's a bit of a ghost town. Cap Hill is always bustling because you have that integration, you have that mixed zoning of the residential and the commercial right next to each other. Everyone's always going out to the 7-Eleven for a Gatorade or something, It does feel like a bit of a ghost town downtown. On first, near Pike Place, right? It's busy. You go up a few, you go to 4th or 5th or whatever. You have the shopping area. During the day, it's fine. Past a certain point, though, you're just walking past empty office buildings looming. You've got the for lease foreclosure signs sort of papering the windows. I know this is happening all over America. Maybe Seattle's getting hit harder with it because we're more of a tech hub. You have more at-home workers. When you say make downtown more residential, what does that look like to you? I mean, I go there near every day, right? I'm rotating downtown Seattle, a 3D image of it in my head. Make it better, please.
Yeah, I mean, so part of this is, with all that vacant office space, like we need to activate that. And if there's buildings that could actually be converted into residential, that is like definitely worth looking at. I think there was a study done, and it's hard, right? Because like an office building is just laid out very differently from a place that people live. So it doesn't always work. But I think there's at least a few buildings downtown that could be repurposed into residential buildings. And then it's about how we build, right? And, we have this new social housing developer in Seattle that voters approved at the ballot last year and then voted to fund this year. That was actually the reason why I decided to jump into this race, because our current mayor was an opponent of funding our social housing developer through a tax on wealthy corporations. But anyway, we have this new social housing developer, and I think there's really opportunities in downtown and adjacent neighborhoods to build a lot of social housing. So that's like permanently affordable, mixed income, publicly owned housing. And there's actually going to be a couple of new light rail stations that are built, kind of one to the south end of downtown, another on the south end of the Chinatown International District. And so as we're building those new stations, there's a big opportunity to build a lot of social housing kind of around on top of those stations. So it's really about like putting more housing downtown. And then with that need to come all the amenities that people who live there need, right? So like we need more grocery stores, we need childcare, all the things that people need to live there and, have everything that they need without getting in their car.
Especially the International District, I feel like that place could boom with the right investment, where it's placed, what it's next to. I feel like there's room for so much good there. So you talked earlier about the struggle that downtown is going through, and among those you listed homelessness. So, again, this is like a broader West Coast issue, but Seattle has been going through it for a long time. Housing shortages, cost of living skyrocketing, more and more people in the streets. And if I'm recalling correctly, actually fewer rooms for homeless people. We actually have fewer accommodations for them now than we did before the pandemic, which is insane. It's really difficult because I think a lot of voters, when they imagine crime and they imagine threats to themselves when they go downtown, a lot of them imagine visible homelessness. You know, there's like a bias there where they perceive that as evidence of them being unsafe, not like actual crime. And for that reason, a lot of voters, they're real nervous about homeless people. I mean, it's a serious issue all over the board, but like, what can be done there? You know?
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously like a huge issue in Seattle and a lot of cities. And it's complicated, right? Because I think it's true. We don't want to conflate homelessness and crime, right? Because like people are homeless because we don't have enough affordable housing, we don't have enough shelter, and there are plenty of people who commit crimes who are not homeless people. At the same time, there is a connection, right? And it's like, if you have thousands of people who are sleeping on the street, who have nowhere to go, and some of them, you know, have issues with substance use disorder, you know, drug addiction, some of them have mental illness, and they're like super stressed out and desperate because they don't have anything, right? Like, yes, people are going to commit generally low level crimes in order to survive.
I've always said this, but if I ever had to sleep on the street, I would go insane immediately. Like, that's my promise, I guess, to people listening. I think like it's insane. Pardon me for interrupting, but it's insane that we have this standard where we set in motion every institutional force that could force people out onto the street, and then we act surprised when there are any deleterious social consequences. Like, we did that. We put all the, you know, forces in motion there. And I mean, I still think people often overstate the perceived threat, but it's like, at the same time, if you're willing, people will put 100 million into the police to get them to like break up homeless tents, and won't put 10 million into building tiny homes, you know? Like, we're not solution oriented.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's really like, this is one of the centerpieces of my campaign, because it's like, you know, back in 2015, like 10 years ago, Seattle and King County declared a civil state of emergency on homelessness, right? And like every year, there's just more people sleeping outside, homelessness increases. And we're just like, we're not taking it seriously, right? And like you mentioned, like we have less shelter now than we did 4 years ago. And the current mayor, his approach to the crisis is totally just sweeping people around. It's like, you know, he's like, okay, people want to see fewer tents. Well, we're going to put all the tents in a dumpster. Okay, well, guess what? There are fewer tents now, but there's more people. And now those people are passed out on the sidewalk, and now those people are sleeping in the doorways of small businesses.
You know that area up 3rd, 4th, 5th, like a little bit north of the main city core, where it just looks like dilapidated up there fully, and it's just they're cordoned into like a space, all the homeless people and the vagrants and so on, and it's awful. And I'm used to that because I grew up in LA, and LA has done the same thing for ages on Skid Row or in parts near Venice Beach, which is where they give up on fixing anything, and they're like, the most we can aspire to is you push homeless people into a corner. You know, and it's sickening. And I think everyone feels bad about it for a variety of reasons. And it just makes people not believe in society, in the capacity for a city to fix things.
Absolutely. And I think that's happened totally in Seattle, where people just lose faith in the government's ability to get anything done. And it's really damaging. And, you know, so I think like we got to do better. And that means opening more shelter. That means making sure that we have the services that people need, so that when we're able to bring people into shelter and housing, that you know, they're successful there, because some people do need a lot of support, especially if they've been on the streets for a long time. And yeah, so I mean, that's like a very, very high priority. And especially like we have the World Cup coming next June, July. And so that's going to mean like tons of people are going to be coming into Seattle, and there's going to be this huge pressure to like clean up the streets, right? And we can't just be sweeping people into the shadows, because that's totally what's going to happen, you know, if the current mayor is in charge. Yeah,
Bruce Harrell has, it's insane to me how, I mean, people think of Seattle as an extremely progressive city, right? LA, you know, LA leans blue, but it's a huge city. There's a lot of different interests there. Seattle is known for being pretty left-leaning. It's always been odd to me that it's not been reflected in our mayorship.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting because we had, we've in the past. Right now, our city council is not very progressive at all. But
Mm.
before that, for about a decade, we had like quite a progressive city council, and we had Shama Sawant, our socialist Trotskyist city council member who was in office for a decade, and she was originally elected citywide, so it was like the whole city voted for her, and then she was reelected as a district council member. So yeah, we've had like very progressive people at times elected to the city council, but voters tend to be more conservative, more cautious when it comes to the mayor. And I get that, right? Because the mayor actually has a lot more power, a lot more executive power over how the city runs. Whereas if you're a council member, you're like one of 9 legislators. And so maybe it's a calculation on the part of voters of like, okay, like we'll give this person a try or something. But then when it comes to the mayor, they're like, oh shit, we need to make sure this person can actually run the city. So yeah, that is something that's interesting about this race is, the last time we had a progressive mayor, I think, Mike McGinn, who was back in 2009 to 2013. He's certainly not as left as I am, but he was kind of a Sierra Club, like environmentalist, kind of progressive mayor.
Better than Bruce, yeah, certainly. In that respect, I mentioned tiny homes earlier. I've seen them a couple of times. I know a few of the like areas. I haven't been to all of them. Is that a more Seattle specific kind of local affordable housing? Because I don't think I've seen that elsewhere. Would that be like something you'd be interested in expanding in the future?
Yeah, so tiny homes are not considered housing, right? They're a form of shelter.
Okay.
They're not meant to be kind of where someone lives forever, right? It's more of a first step kind of out of homelessness, and then hopefully we have actual permanent housing at some point. But yeah, tiny houses were kind of pioneered here, right? So we have a few organizations of like self-managed homeless communities. Nicholsville is one of them, and Nicholsville was actually named. So if you're familiar with history back to the Great Depression of the 1930s, right, there were Hoovervilles, right, which were these big homeless encampments, which were named after President Hoover because of his policies forcing people into homelessness, right? And so we had a Mayor Nichols early in this century, and under his watch, I don't remember all of the history of it, but basically this homeless community came together and called themselves Nicholsville. And so we still have these Nicholsville self-managed tiny house villages, and we have a couple other organizations that also run these self-managed tent cities. And so that was kind of a model of like kind of mutual aid, self-help among homeless folks that grew up here, and has been really successful. There's different models now of kind of how the tiny house villages run. Some of them are very self-managed, where the people who live there have kind of specific roles within the community. Others are a little bit more just like top-down traditional kind of shelter model. But that is something that was pioneered here. And now there are other places around the country, especially on the West Coast, which also have tiny house villages. And it's really, I would do a large expansion of tiny house villages as mayor. When you talk to unsheltered homeless folks, people who are living in tents by the side of the road or whatever, most of them, like, that is the kind of shelter that they want because it gives them privacy, right? It's not like a mat on the floor where, like, let's say you have like PTSD and like having someone like lying next to you, like screaming or something, right? Like people want that privacy for understandable reasons. So the privacy, the ability to store your belongings, the fact that you have access to it 24/7, it's like your home. It's not just like a shelter that you have to, come into after 8 p.m. and leave before 6 a.m.
It provides you the facsimile of like regular living. It gives you that. It gives dignity. Yeah. It's it's small. The people watching like a tiny home, you can look up tiny home Seattle, right? We're talking like not even 100 square feet. It's just it's a room. It's a room with a front door. But I think they're delightful because I know I've had friends who have been homeless. I know that often homelessness shelters, like you said, they kick you out during the day. There are a lot of practices within some homeless shelters that are kind of hostile to people. They're a little, it's like a tough love approach that I think makes people feel undignified and inhibits their ability to get in the right emotional and mental state to, shower, shave, go get a job, whatever it is they need to do. And I think it contributes more and more to that belief, or that disbelief maybe, in the idea that society can do something for these people, you know? Because I think a lot of people want to write them off. And there's also this weird, I guess it's less popular these days, but there was a period of time where I feel like a very common liberal talking point about homelessness was that it's basically no big deal. Like, there's nothing to worry about. It's like a systemic issue that we'll fix by doing more of the same, but you're overreacting by being concerned about it, you know? And nowadays, I think we're past that and everyone takes it seriously. It's just the conservative wing of taking it seriously is, what if we put them in a camp outside of town, you know, actual Trump proposition, versus, you know, we know we actually need to spend money on this because our cities are actually crumbling. Like the fabric of our cities is disintegrating because we won't even do this basic thing. You know? Totally.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, there's a whole complicated debate around the role of like drug use. And, you know, on the right, it gets very kind of, everyone wants there to be some solution, not everyone, but the right wants there to be some solution where you just kind of force everyone into treatment and you kind of shove them through a drug treatment machine. And then they come out the other end and like, oh, now they're like productive members of society or something. And not really understanding. I mean, it's like if you know someone who's, you know, been addicted to drugs and like how complex it is, and like, and you know, really there needs to be like, people need to have that vision of like there actually is a life worth living on the other side of this, and there's relationships and there's community and there's meaning. And you know, often people who are homeless and using drugs, it's like they've often had very traumatic you know, pasts, relationships, childhoods, right? And so there's just, it's a complicated thing to kind of help people get into a better situation.
And everyone, I think, needs to reconcile with the fact that, especially in today's climate, you know, people are a couple of incidents of bad luck away from maybe sharing the same fate. Like, it's the existence of a social safety that benefits literally everybody. We otherize homeless people so much. People are way closer to that point than they're often willing to acknowledge.
Absolutely. And I mean, ultimately, it really does come down to a housing affordability problem, right? Like there's very, very strong correlations in like, if you look at all the cities around the country, right, like rates of homelessness versus housing costs and whether people can actually afford you know, to rent a home. And so it's like, yeah, in a sense, it's very complicated, right? There's all these different things that feed into it. Everyone becomes homeless in a different way. But like, ultimately, it is about housing costs. Because like people who are housed also have drug problems, right? This is
Many such cases. I've seen it happen. Yeah, I have another question, another topic of equal seriousness. Will you be the mayor to finally clean the gum wall? It's disgusting.
I mean, I think the gum wall is cleaned periodically, but it's just, it comes back, right? Like people go and they stick their gum on there, and that's the way it's always going to be.
How much of our city tax dollars would you be willing to put into more regular cleanings of the gum wall?
It's my top priority.
All right, I'm happy to hear that. Okay, yeah, I haven't filled out my ballot just yet. It's this and the next question that's determining whether I lean here or Harrell. How do you feel about Saint Rat and the summer that you know he may or may not be associated with?
Yeah, I mean, I am 100% in favor of Saint Rat. As a Capitol Hill resident, yes, I love it. And I mean, in general, with this kind of the city's approach to graffiti, I mean, our current council and mayor have this very kind of performative approach to public safety where they want to kind of show people that they're doing something. But so they're slapping these big fat fines on graffiti. And it's like, is there actually any evidence that a $1,500 fine deters tagging? Yeah. Saint Rat can live on.
Saint Rat makes me feel safe. I don't know about you, but like, I feel like some kinds of graffiti, murals, whatever, kind of contribute to a sense of people care about this community, you know? It's lived in. Capitol Hill has this all over, right? It's obvious people live there. They love Capitol Hill. They love feeling like they're a part of it. You know, people are carving their initials on this tree or that. They're leaving marks everywhere, and it makes it feel like a genuine environment. Personally, I think that conveys safety a lot more than brick wall that has been painted over 6 times in the last, you know, year to get rid of the previous tagging. That to me comes across as a lot more inhuman, you know?
And I do think that, you know, on the positive end, the city can do a lot more with like public art and, encouraging that artistic expression, whether that's like formalized official artists versus creating space where anyone can go and create art. So I think that that's really good. I mean, I will say on the other side of it, like I used to manage an apartment building for years and years, and yeah, I mean, it's annoying when someone comes and tags the building.
A lot of tags are pretty ugly too. It's not, a lot of them could really work on their game a bit. I think they'd be better received.
Yeah, so I mean, I do definitely like I understand that there are a lot of residents who are really annoyed about graffiti, and I do think it's something the city needs to address. But I'm not sure that the approach they're taking right now is the best one. And yeah,
no, I agree. Yeah, performative safety. I understand what you mean. Like God, I know as with many American cities, a lot of the tax dollars, it goes towards SPD. How many of those get used doing like traffic directing around the two stadiums downtown? I swear to people watching, don't know. We've got two stadiums. They're right up against the roads. They're not surrounded by an ocean of concrete like in LA. And every time anything happens there, they got about 50 cops down on the road just directing traffic. I don't know what these guys are getting paid overtime. They're probably getting six figures for this. I figure there's got to be something in Seattle happening they could be better deployed on at that point, but they're directing cars. Why do we do that?
Yeah, it's a problem. I mean, and I believe the city spends like over $100 million a year on police overtime. So that's definitely, yeah, it's a lot of money. It's definitely not a good use of resources. I mean, in general, there's other cities around the country that have done a lot more than Seattle to basically civilianize functions like that the police don't need to be doing. It's not just directing traffic at events, right? It's like taking down reports of property crimes. It's responding to non-injury traffic accidents, right? Things where we don't actually need a armed sworn officer responding. And, civilianizing those roles is a really important thing because those civilian roles, they're like good civilian jobs, but they're a lot cheaper than cops. And so when we're looking at a big budget crunch, it's really important that we move in that direction. It's not an easy thing to do because a lot of this is governed by the police contract. And so it actually has to be negotiated with the police union. But we need to move in that direction. And we also need to greatly expand our alternative response for like mental health crisis calls. And there's a whole range of like 911 calls where a police response is not necessary. And in some cases, it can be actively harmful. And so the more we can do to have like other, social service or social workers or mental health professionals responding to those calls, the better. And we've made a little bit of progress on that. And that was thanks to the pressure built up in 2020 around the George Floyd protests. But again, compared to a lot of other cities in the country, we have not gone very far in that direction. We have only, I think, 24 employees in our care department, which is this alternative response department. And they're also only deployed alongside cops. So we're still not making the best use of our police resources. Like we really need our police force to just like focus on serious crime and responding to those calls that they need to be there for.
Yeah, it comes back to that social trust element, right? When you stop believing anything can be fixed in a civil sense, it's like, well, why not have like an armored officer show up for every incident? Window gets broken. It's not even a matter of disdain for the work. It's literally a bad use. Accountants are very useful people. I wouldn't want them taking notes down after a baseball hits my window either. I just feel like there's probably something else they could be doing. And it seems like over the past, I don't know how long it would be, half century, for a long time now, more and more roles have gotten folded into the cops. They're the only a public worker that most people interact with day to day, unless they're going into a USPS office.
Totally, yeah, and honestly, like most police officers, they don't want to respond to like mental health crisis calls anyway, right? Like that's not what they signed up for. And like I mean honestly, I have sympathy. Like it's a hard job, and especially with like the homelessness crisis and everything. And it's just like cops are out there on the front lines, like interacting with people in situations that was, again, not what they signed up for. So the more we can take those things out of their hands, the better. And New Orleans recently, actually, they've had luck with civilianizing one of the things I mentioned, responding to non-injury traffic incidents. And then their police response times for 911 calls dropped dramatically because their police were able to focus on those. So there's definitely progress.
No reason to be, I don't know. It's weird to me. So many American cities keep running into these same dips all over, right? The story's the same. Look, I love Seattle, okay? I more so than most any city I've been to. And I think we do a lot of things better here, but there's this same recurring pattern with like mixed use zoning, building new housing, cops taking care of every job in the city via overtime. We just keep running into it over and over. I know there's been a lot of talk of broader, like, national trends in the context of your candidacy. Zoran Mamdani, I'm sure you've heard him brought up in the context of, like, young, progressive mayoral candidates over and over. Do you think there is a real vibe shift? I mean, do you see this from your perspective happening broadly, or do you think people are looking too much into a trend?
No, I mean, I think there's absolutely a moment here. I mean, I would love to be able to say that, like, the reason why our campaign seems to be doing very well and is polling neck and neck with the incumbent is just because we've run a fantastic campaign and I'm a great candidate, right? But I think there's bigger things going on too, right? And so, we're definitely in this moment. The national moment is defined by Trump's election last fall. It's hard to believe that it hasn't even been a year since he got elected, given everything that's gone down.
Yeah.
But I think that, what we saw was a kind of, like, establishment kind of wing of the Democratic Party that just utterly failed to stop that train wreck. And so I think voters are looking at that and they're just like, shit, like, we need to do something differently. And so I think that is definitely part of the national moment that we're in all over the country, where people are looking for, like, a different kind of leadership, and a leadership that will stand up to Trump, and a leadership that has, like, more of a vision than just the status quo and business as usual. And then I think the other part of the context is the affordability crisis, right? Like, we've had really high inflation, just, costs of everything, especially in these high cost cities, just going up and up. Rents are going up, childcare is too expensive, groceries are too expensive, everything's too expensive, and people are feeling that, right? And so I think that people are also just hungry for leadership that recognizes that and that is going to tackle that with everything we've got, right? And that's not what they're seeing from a lot of these incumbents. There's not what they're seeing from Andrew Cuomo. That's not what they're seeing from Bruce Harrell here in Seattle. So those people are just perceived as part of the problem. I mean, Harrell's been in office for 16 of the last 18 years. So he's basically presided over this skyrocketing of living costs, skyrocketing of the homelessness crisis. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's that, like, bigger context that Seattle shares with New York City and with a lot of other cities around the country. And so it's not surprising to me that we're seeing some common themes in, younger, progressive left candidates coming up and challenging those incumbents.
I think that it is kind of a rising tide rises all boats thing. I think it's also, you have run a good campaign. I like the fact that you approach all of this, I think, with an air of pragmatism. There's a lot of very ideologically motivated people, especially young people. And when they get into politics, it's because they have high-minded ideas about what's right or wrong. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that necessarily. But the Transit Riders Union, which you co-founded, I'm told, very impressive stuff. It's a bottom-up approach to political organizing, right? People need transit. We organize around transit. We're identifiable through our use, so we use that as a means to move forward. Same with renting, right? It's a very, if you will, like, labor-oriented perspective on how people should organize. It's not really ideology first, though, of course, the ideology kind of follows. If you're interested in advocating for people who use public transit, it makes sense then what you would be prioritizing, what kinds of concerns you would go for. I think that stuff like that is rare. I despair a little bit sometimes when I look online. I see, look, again, really nice folks with great ideas, but the way they approach local governance makes me think they might have bought into that same poison. Cities can't do anything. Nothing can change, The only way you can engage with it is as an outsider, an activist. You have to be ideologically minded from the outside. And your candidacy, and I spent so long just browsing through your Insta feed, all the way you've engaged with folks and talked about things. It's a reminder that it is possible to approach things from a civic mindset and make a difference, that you can come at it not like crunching an ideological frame into that slot, but you can just fix things from within that dynamic. I don't know, I'm rambling. I do like your campaign, It's not just a rising tide.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I do think we've run a pretty good campaign too. And And I mean, you're right? Like my whole career has been about let's find those issues that people are facing right now today, and let's do something about it, right? And back in 2022, I and the Transit Riders Union led a campaign, built a coalition to raise the minimum wage in the city of Tukwila, which is just south of Seattle, to the highest in the country, and we did that. So now we have the highest minimum wage in the country, and several other cities around King County. We then supported campaigns to do the same thing, and that was really like looking at the moment that we were in, right? We weren't coming in with like an abstract idea of like, oh, we just need to raise the minimum wage, but it was like, no, it's 2022. The cost of living is super high with rising rents. When like South Center Mall, there's all these like low wage retail food service jobs. So we can go and we can organize with those folks. We can organize with the immigrant communities that live in Tukwila, and we can run this campaign and we can raise wages for like thousands and thousands of workers. And so we just tackled it and we did it. And that's the kind of like pragmatism. It's like, I mean, it's idealistic pragmatism, right? Like we're definitely pushing the envelope in the sense that like plenty of people told me you can't do that campaign. They're like, you're just going to get you're going to lose, right? The businesses are going to come after you, and there's just no way that you can do it. And you have to push forward against that, and you have to know what you're up against, right? So you can't be naive either, because when you try to change things, like if you're battling entrenched interests, like you're trying to tax the rich or you're trying to raise the minimum wage, like there are going to be people who fight you on that, and you have to be clear-eyed about that. But also at the end of the day, it is about like what are those changes you can make that are going to benefit people on the ground every single day. And that's definitely kind of my energy that I want to bring into the mayor's office too, is how can we really make sure that our government is delivering for people, and especially for working people that too often get left behind.
Those entrenched interests are going to give you hell if you win the general. I mean, Amazon, Microsoft, everyone, right? It's the same issue San Francisco has, except I don't know. I feel like maybe the population of San Francisco is a little bit more politically engaged. Maybe I'm totally off on that. It feels like Amazon and such have had so much leeway here for such a long time. How do you, and again, like, it's an idealistic thing, right? It's easy to say, well, we'll ignore them. We'll do what the people want, right? But realistically, how do you work around that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be smart about it. And also, it's not like, I mean, it's not always, I mean, looking at the history, for example, in Seattle of fighting for a tax on big businesses, right? Back in 2017, 2018, I was involved in a campaign to tax big businesses to fund homeless shelter and services and affordable housing. And the tax at that point that was proposed was actually very modest, right? The city council passed it, and then there was this total freak out where the businesses funded a repeal campaign, like a referendum. And they gathered all these signatures to put a repeal on the ballot, and the city council ended up basically repealing the law that they had just passed. So it was a big defeat. And I learned a lot from that about messaging and how to go about these things. But a few years later, in 2020, that's when we were able to successfully pass the Jumpstart tax, which is a tax on wealthy corporations, and it's like way bigger than excuse me, sorry. Than the tax that was considered back in 2018. So, you don't always win. And I do think that moving forward, I mean, it's going to be a balancing act. And especially, if I'm successful in this election, as the mayor, it's a different role than being an advocate, right? Or an organizer, right? So like as an advocate or an organizer, you just push as hard as you can in one direction. As the mayor, you got to work with everyone, right? So there's more of a role of like, yes, I need a relationship with with the business community. And so, it's going to be a balancing act. But at the end of the day, it's about having a vision and being like, no, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do. And it's absolutely true that, the forces that don't want to see me elected, which definitely includes Amazon and the Chamber of Commerce and the realtors and the developers, like, they are absolutely going to be putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into a campaign to defeat me in the general election. And absolutely, I mean, I would say probably also trying to undermine my administration. So it's going to be challenging. And I think that this really underscores just the importance of organizing, right? And, this is the work that I've done over the years, but like we need people on the outside that are also organizing and making sure that they're able to support good policies. And, it's going to be a challenge, but I think we can do it.
I think it's doable too. I mean, the political demographics of the city are again pretty left leaning. I think that there's always been, I wouldn't say an adversarial relationship, right? A lot of the people who are out there and protesting, they're at Pride, they're being very outward in their political, their left leaning affiliations, are also tech workers. So I don't think that there's a contradiction there necessarily. It's just, I don't know. It's just crazy to me how much work has to be done to fight uphill against those interests. Ultimately, it benefits them too. Realtors, in the long run, benefit from a larger stock of housing that they can, take, that they can sell, they can take advantage of. It's like locking down on property rights in a Western town with 200 people in it because you're worried about the devaluing of your current properties versus the benefit of adding 100 more. It's just it's short-sighted, but it's happening here.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, the tax question is going to be a really important one moving forward. So we have this large tax on big corporations. I do think we're in a moment where there are some indications that Amazon may be moving some high-paid jobs across the lake to Bellevue to avoid taxes. So I think we have to be cautious when we think about adding to that tax, because I think we're also in a moment where tech workers are feeling more and more insecure about their jobs for some really good reasons, right? Especially when you think about AI and the way that that's starting to transform the industry. We've seen big tech companies doing some layoffs. And so I do think that there's we just have to be cautious about these things, right? Because ideally, you have a level playing field, right? So that there would be a statewide tax on wealthy corporations. And when you don't have that and you're trying to do these things in just one city, I mean, there is a risk that you change the environment such that then companies are incentivized to start moving jobs to nearby cities. So we do have to consider these things. So I don't think we can't just be oh, we're just going to keep taxing them and taxing them, right? We do have to be cautious.
Yeah, Bellevue's cooperation would help. Definitely.
Exactly. I mean, I think it's a good time in Bellevue for them to start thinking about taxing Amazon.
Have you considered implementing one-way $100 tolls on the two bridges leading over to Bellevue? So when they inevitably come back over here, for their work and their day trips, we can make back the money we'd lose in the taxes of them working over there?
Oh, I feel bad for the employees then who are being forced to commute to Bellevue, and now we're tolling them as well.
Yeah, it's rough. Will you commit to doing that?
No comment.
All right, gotcha. It is unfortunate. The geography of Seattle makes it pretty difficult to plan out a lot of things, I think. The fact that we're hemmed in by the Sound and Lake Washington, and you have the Channel North, and then too far down south, of course, you've got I don't think people are going to want to develop residentially too far into SoDo, right? Because you're getting more in the industrial area. Maybe if the city grew enough. I mean, I like an industrial core in a city. When you think of the city's expansion prospects, what does that look like to you? Are there any areas you think specifically could use some growth?
Yeah, I mean, so right now the city is discussing the comprehensive plan, which is kind of the city's growth plan for the next decade. And, really one of the big things is making sure that we can build more housing in these neighborhoods that historically have been single family, often exclusionary, right? We've had redlining. We have a long history of redlining in Seattle where, people of color weren't allowed in certain neighborhoods, to purchase houses in certain neighborhoods. And so we have, a lot of the city has been zoned for just single family homes. And so you can't build apartment buildings there. You can't build duplexes or triplexes. That's starting to change because we now have a state law which mandates in Seattle at least fourplexes being allowed on any lot. And so the city's kind of discussing the rules around that now and whether to go further. So I really do think that we need to be allowing more density throughout the city, and especially in those neighborhoods that already have really good amenities and where people lower income people have often been locked out historically. And I mean, there's a lot of kind of devils in the details about the rules around how that building can happen. But in general, I'm in favor of more multifamily housing around Seattle. I'm also, there's a big discussion around trees, tree canopy and greenery, because a lot of times what happens with this new development is that big trees get cut down. So I think we need to find a way to be incentivizing working around big trees so that we're also keeping Seattle a green city. And also we need to plant more trees, especially in neighborhoods that have lost a lot of tree canopy already. But in general, we need a lot more density. And we really need to be like creating more neighborhoods like Capitol Hill where everything you need is right there, right? The grocery store is right there. There's childcare right there. And
it's a 15-minute city.
Like, city, exactly, that kind of concept. And, you know, looking for examples of that. I mean, I think like looking over across the ocean to like Paris, right, where, you know, Mayor Anne Hidalgo has made like incredible strides in like pedestrianizing and making Paris into this really like walkable, you know, city with the 15-minute city concept. So yeah, I think we need to do a lot more of that.
There are a bunch of neighborhoods that I've always thought like what it's missing just a little bit of density and
for sure
a little bit of a commercial core, you know, not just one little commercial road, but give it like a couple next to each other, layer a neighborhood in there. First Hill, there are parts of Queen Anne that I've always felt like could be built out, not just the, you know, the fancy rich people parts, right? Some more like lower in the hill. There are some areas that I've always wondered there should be, like, if they just put a coffee shop here. Judkins, yeah, it feels like all the groundwork is laid. I do sympathize though, right? It's got to be difficult building out from there with the tree coverage. We're a beautiful, like very green city, I think, by American standards, you know. We have gorgeous trees to protect too. I mean, some of those like old ones throughout Cap Hill, funnily enough, you know, they look like they're 300 years old. They're on the corner of a property and they're lifting the whole sidewalk with them, and they're beautiful and they add so much character. Yeah, nothing gets done in a day. Is that true, by the way, that every property can be like zoned for a four townhouse plex? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's kind of a new change that's happening. That's happened this year. Yep.
That's really cool. I mean, yeah.
Now, I mean, but the thing is that like it's really important, the details, because you can say that, but then if the city puts all kinds of requirements around like parking, you know, having parking space and this and that and the other thing, you can effectively make it so that lots and lots of lots you were allowed to do that, right? So that's the spirit of the thing, but we need to make sure that that's actually allowed in practice.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Devil's in the details. Yeah, I didn't know. As recently as this year, I'm actually shocked. I'm ashamed I hadn't heard of it. I feel like I've been seeing a lot of density, like densification going on in these, you know, mostly communities up on the hill, like anything Judkins and north all the way up to Volunteer Park. Seen more like 4 townhouses squarely right next to each other, which sometimes they look a little bit too like smooth plastic facing for my taste personally, but I certainly like the idea of 4 people getting to live there rather than just one person. I mean, that's an improvement.
Yeah, and this is another thing about kind of the details that it's important, because I think that the way that the plan is now that was transmitted from the mayor's office, it is a recipe for a lot more of those, people call them like tombstone style townhomes, where it's just kind of like they're vertical and then there's just like pavement in between them. And there's actually like there are like better ways that we can have that same density, but it requires being like more flexible about how it's you know, a building is placed on a lot, and doing more of the kind of stacked flats so that there's more room for greenery or trees. So there's like we can write the rules in a better way so that it's not all of those townhomes, because I do think that when people in what have historically been single family neighborhoods object to development, a lot of times what they're objecting to is the aesthetics of those townhome style developments, and I get that. I mean, again, I also agree, like, we want more people to be able to live there, but I do understand that, you know, some of those objections, and politically it's important to try to you know, have that conversation and get some of those people to agree with more density. And part of that is also, like, in practice, trying to make it possible to build more aesthetically pleasing buildings.
I mean, half the reason Cap Hill's so nice is because they built out those apartments in brick, you know? I mean, we can't make stuff in brick anymore. We've forgotten how, apparently. Nobody builds with brick, but it would be nice if we did, because it's very pretty.
It is. I mean, I live in one of those buildings, right? I live in one of those old brick buildings that was built in, you know, 1910 or something like that. And yeah, I love it. I mean, I agree. I've kind of got, and sometimes I think our design rules around, like, we have actual, like, our design review board will actually say, no, you can't build a building that looks old. Like, it has to look modern, and that's really
that's psychotic. That's insane. There's no human on earth who wants that. I don't understand. It's contrarian. I don't know. We're getting near. I can't believe it's been near an hour, but I've got a fastball pitch you the easy ones. What's your favorite restaurant in Cap Hill?
Oh man, these days I really like Kedai Makan. Do you know that? It's like kind of a Malaysian
No, I
restaurant.
haven't eaten there. Wait, what street is it on?
It's like up on kind of the corner of like 15th and Pine, I think.
Okay, I was at Momiji's last night. Okay, I'll go there next time I'm in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Have you been to the Unicorn?
I haven't.
You gotta go.
Does that mean I'm not? Does that mean I'm not a real Seattleite? Or
Well, it means the homosexuals of Cap Hill might, they might turn to the queer friendly Bruce Harrell, on the 5th. I really like the Unicorn. They do great drag shows there. No, I love Cap Hill. Have you been to Carmelo's?
Yes, I've been to Carmelo's.
Love Carmelo's. That's the best outside of Mas Cafe. That's the best Mexican food I've had since leaving Los Angeles.
Yeah, Carmelo's is great. I also like Tacos Chukis.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I guess.
Yeah, there's one right on 23rd that I've been hovering around. I need to go in there more often. I don't know. I try. I mean, it's so expensive to eat out. I know you can't fix that as mayor, so I won't put that one on you. But
I can fix that as mayor.
You can.
Okay, I can't totally fix it, but have you seen my pizza video? Okay, like housing costs contribute to the high cost of food. So yeah.
So you will make DoorDash free if you're mayor.
Yeah, we're gonna have a municipal version of DoorDash that is publicly subsidized.
Okay, like you say that as though it's a joke, but that would actually be really cool. I think a lot of people would like that.
It would be cool.
That would be really cool. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time. Bruce Harrell needs to get back to me on Saint Rat, and once he does, I'll know who I'm filling out my ballot for. I really hope you get his ass. I know it's a jungle primary, so it's out to the general, right, for the real face-off, but I really hope you do.
Oh, thank you. And we will learn something on Tuesday about how things stand. So, but yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Katie Wilson, thank you so much for taking the time. Good luck. I know, I mean, it must be a very stressful time, so I hope that you're doing well. We'll see what we see come the 5th.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care. Everyone, go on ahead and join the Discord, please. Everyone take care.